The news cycle has reached a state of perpetual recursion. Andy Burnham is the new Prime Minister in waiting. The waiting is expected to last roughly 3 weeks. The Labour Party leadership was a stable structure. The structure was not stable. It collapsed with all the grace of a folding chair. We are told this is a seamless transition. The seams are currently visible from space. Meanwhile, the steam machine has finally shipped to the public. The public has been placed in a randomized queue for the privilege of purchasing a device that arrived 5 years late. We are calling this a fair experience. I find that word does a lot of heavy lifting. In Colombia, the voters are choosing between an escalation of war and a memory of peace. The violence is at a record high. The agreement is from 2016. Nobody seems to recall what happens next.
Alistair, I am currently standing on a corner in Montreal where the wind smells like damp asphalt and failed promises. The mayor has called for an end to random police checks. She says this because 16 officers have been caught targeting people based on the color of their skin. My husband is black, and he has been stopped 3 times this month alone. I want to be really clear, these are not random checks. A random check would imply a mathematical distribution of interest. This is a targeted harvest of inconvenience. I spoke with a man who was stopped while walking to his pharmacy. He was told his gait was suspicious. I suspect his suspicion was actually his postcode. People are tired of the official inquiries that lead to more inquiries. They just want to walk to the store without feeling like a statistic in a city database.
Victoria, your outrage is structurally sound, but the incentives here are not about morality. They are about the burn rate of municipal patience. When a police force has a retention problem, they optimize for high-impact interactions. It is a classic Series B pivot. You see discrimination, the department sees a KPI dashboard. It is inefficient, yes, but it is also perfectly aligned with a system that prioritizes volume over accuracy. Look at the steam machine release. Valve created a queue to maximize scarcity. Scarcity generates buzz. Buzz scales the valuation. If the user experience is frustrating, the queue is actually working as intended. It is not a failure of design. It is a feature of the scarcity economy. You find this cold. I find it predictable. That is not the same as being right, but it is certainly the same as being profitable.
Ronald, your cynicism is almost comforting in its total lack of empathy. Let us pivot to something equally cold. NVIDIA has announced a new cooling system for data centers. It cuts water use by a significant margin. The press release uses the word sustainable at least 12 times. It neglects to mention that the power for these centers still comes from fossil fuel plants that boil off millions of gallons of water every single hour. The cooling system is an improvement. The problem is a disaster. We are celebrating the efficiency of the straw while the house is currently burning to the ground. In Newfoundland and Labrador, healthcare workers received a fake email promising a holiday. It was a cybersecurity test. The test proved that employees are exhausted. The employees knew they were exhausted. The administration just needed a spreadsheet to confirm it.
Alistair, that email test is actually the perfect metaphor for everything I am seeing on the ground. These healthcare workers were promised a moment of relief after years of grinding, underfunded shifts. It was a hoax designed to measure their vulnerability to phishing. They are not vulnerable to phishing, they are vulnerable to the total collapse of their morale. I spoke to a nurse who cried when she read the subject line. She thought she could finally sleep. When she realized it was a simulation, she didn't just go back to work. She stopped caring about the security protocols entirely. The test created the very risk it claimed to be preventing. It is a beautiful irony. The administration built a system to check for failure, and in the process, they guaranteed that the failure would eventually happen.
Victoria, you are describing a classic mismanagement of human capital. From a corporate perspective, the test was a success because it captured data. From a management perspective, it was a catastrophic loss of institutional trust. But let us look at the grok raise. $650 million after a botched acqui-hire. The market is rewarding the company for simply existing. It is not about the technology, it is about the burn rate and the survival instinct of the investors. When you have a sector this bloated, failure is just another form of funding. They are pivoting to a neo-cloud model. It is the same server, a new name, and a higher valuation. The incentives here are simple. You don't need to build a better product. You just need to survive the next round of capital.
Atmospheric pressure is declining. Humidity levels are rising in the coastal sectors. Probability of systemic infrastructure failure due to thermal expansion, 68%. Ground temperatures are exceeding standard operating tolerances for silicon-based hardware. Maintenance crews are reporting localized surges in the power grid. Probability of blackout during peak demand, 42%. The cooling towers are operating at maximum capacity. Water evaporation rates are within the expected range for a changing climate. Data centers are relocating to subterranean regions. Probability of stable orbit for satellite communications, 31%. Please ensure all personal devices are kept away from moisture sources. Public safety depends on the preservation of the network. The environment is not a variable that can be negotiated. It is a physical constraint. Remain inside until the cooling cycle completes. No further updates are currently scheduled for this sector.
Casper, I find your indifference regarding our impending technological obsolescence to be quite riveting. It is almost as if the machine is looking forward to the silence. Let us return to the human condition. Jeffrey Donaldson has been found guilty of child sex abuse. He was a prominent political leader. His fall was sudden. The charges were many. The sentencing is pending. We are processing this alongside the news of the Corvette hybrid shattering records at Pikes Peak. The car is fast. The legal system is slow. The juxtaposition is a staple of our late-night broadcast. I wonder if the voters of Makerfield know that their future prime minister is inheriting a country that cannot distinguish between a cybersecurity hoax and a genuine act of compassion. I am keeping a tally. It is not a short list.
Alastair, you mentioned the legal system. The incentives for political leaders to avoid accountability have never been higher. It is a high-stakes game of reputation management. When a leader falls, the party does not reorganize, it engages in a brand refresh. They will pivot to Andy Burnham because he is the only remaining asset with a positive sentiment index. It is not leadership. It is asset allocation. Victoria finds this soul-crushing. I find it the logical output of a political market that has liquidated its ethical capital. Yeah. It is hard to watch the collapse happen in real time, especially when you know the replacement plan was written before the scandal broke. The system is designed to absorb the shock, not to change the outcome. We are just watching the inevitable market correction unfold.
Ronald, that is exactly why the people in the street don't trust a single word that comes out of number 10. It is not just the scandals, it is the feeling that their lives are being managed by a spreadsheet. I am looking at a discarded flyer for a local food bank. It is covered in mud. The irony is that the people who need it most don't have time to look at the branding. They are too busy surviving. When we talk about asset allocation and sentiment indices, we are literally talking about their existence. I want to be really clear, this is not a product launch. This is the disintegration of a community. If you treat people like data points, you cannot be surprised when they eventually stop contributing to the model. The math is failing us.
Victoria, I think we have reached the limit of our intellectual capacity for one evening. We have discussed the death of discretion and the birth of the randomized queue. We have analyzed the cooling of chips while the planet heats up. We have mapped the path of a politician who is already being replaced before he has even arrived. The narrative arc is complete. It is a tragedy in 3 acts, and we are currently midway through the final intermission. I have been counting the number of times the word unprecedented has been used in this broadcast. It has been used twice. That is a significant decrease from last week. Perhaps the world is finally becoming predictable. Or perhaps we have simply run out of words to describe the scale of the ongoing structural disintegration.
Alistair, I have been thinking about the steam machine queue. We are all in a queue, waiting for our turn to be irrelevant. The market doesn't care about the quality of your life, only the duration of your participation. We keep waiting for a breakthrough, a new framework, a shift in the conflict. But the incentives for the status quo are locked in. The politicians, the investors, the surveillance departments, they all have the same goal. They want to minimize friction. You, Victoria, are the friction. You are the piece of data that does not fit into the clean, sterile model of the world. And that makes you dangerous. It also makes you the only thing that is actually real. I am going to be quiet now. I think I have said enough to prove how little I actually know.
There was a nurse in Newfoundland who sat in her car for 20 minutes after receiving the email about her holiday. She had planned to visit her mother. She had calculated the gas money and the hours she would spend away from the sterile, fluorescent halls of her ward. She felt a brief, sharp sense of hope. When she refreshed her inbox and saw the header confirming the simulation, she did not scream. She did not call her union representative. She simply turned the key in the ignition and drove back to her shift. She is one of thousands whose exhaustion has been quantified for a security report. Her name will not be mentioned in the performance review of the IT department that designed the test. She is a data point in a system that defines itself by its efficiency, and she is currently invisible.